All right, so as promised last time, there will be no more addressing of Mike's drama, bullshit, and excuses. I've actually not been made aware of any new nonsense on his part, and even if I had, I still wouldn't address it. Mike, when you have facts or evidence, you let me know. Rather, I'm going to present the videos of the people that had the balls to send me one, showing repeatedly and conclusively and incontrovertibly what happens to rep speed and rep duration as someone approaches actual muscular failure. There are no spoilers here. They all look the same, because of course they do. Let me add for the functional illiterates watching this, none of these videos are meant to indicate that this is how intensely you should train or that you should or must go to failure. The point of this is to show what failure actually looks like and how rep speed changes, i.e. how it slows as you get to 0 to 1 reps in reserve. To that, let me add, my real point is that until you have trained to this level, where the weight or the bar or the machine handles won't move no matter how hard you push, you don't know what failure is. Nor do you know what 0 reps to failure, 1 rep to failure, 2 reps to failure, etc. are. You can't. You can't anchor to failure if you don't know what it is. And until you've done a set that looks like this, you don't know what failure is, and any workout that's telling you to work at 2 reps to failure, 2 reps in reserve is useless to you. You must know what failure is to use it as an anchor. Nothing more, nothing less. It should also go without saying, none of these videos are of Mike or his training partners, because of course they aren't. And since I challenged Mike based on his how big someone is argument to show his videos to Dorian, I thought I would start with a video that involves Dorian Yates yet again. Let me know when you show him your videos, Mike. All right, so here we have a really badly lit video of Dorian taking someone through a leg press. 0.45 seconds, 0.52 seconds, 0.48, nice and consistent, 0.51, 0.56. All right, 4 reps in reserve, 1.15, a little bit slower. 3, 1.33 seconds, a little bit slower still. All right, coming in at 2 reps in reserve, 3.42, and it looks like it stalls a little bit. He does take a few breaths, a little bit longer rest interval, brings it down. 2.19 seconds, faster than the last rep. Talk about that at the end. All right, he gets ready, final repetition, and it's going to be a grinder and a grinder and a grinder. 6.30 seconds, at which point he does what any human being who went to true failure on the leg press would do, which is collapse on the floor. All right, so what do we see here? A few things. So this is Dorian Yates taking a trainee through a set of leg presses. The reps were non-lock, so I was having to do a little bit more guessing than usual as far as when the final frame was. Again, one missed frame is 1/60th of a second. The reps stay very consistent of the first 5 or 6 reps. They get a little bit slower, just over the second mark before jumping to 3 seconds. The next rep is faster, which is atypical, but I think 2 things are going on. One, the 2 reps in reserve was continuously from the previous rep, and it looked like he kind of stalled at the bottom. He then took multiple breaths, much longer between repetitions, before doing 1 rep in reserve at 2.19 seconds. It's also possible that Dorian was giving him more of a spot. Hard to tell because of the way the video is edited. Another several big breaths into his final repetition, over a 6-second grinder of a rep. Let me add, the way the cameraman zooms in on the last rep, it was really hard to see when he locked out. I made my best guess on the final frame based on when he went for the handles to lock the sled in place. But again, if I'm off by 4 or 5 frames, each frame is 1/60th of a second. It's changing things by a 10th at most. The rep was still 6 seconds long. So the rep started at about 5/10ths of a second and ended over 6 seconds. So that's a sextupling of the rep duration. So except for that weird rep in the middle that I think has to do with the rest interval and maybe a little bit of spotting, the same pattern as always. First 5 or 6 reps are fast, slows down a little bit, slows down more, and then the 0 rep in reserve should be a grinder. At which point you'll note he rolls off the machine and collapses on the floor. Because that's what a true leg set of that intensity looks like. It's not Mike Israetel's trainee finishing 30 reps and not collapsing. Nobody's doing that again in 60 seconds like in the Brigado workout, and certainly not for 8 fucking sets. It's not Mike pretending to do a set of seated leg curls to failure and then stumbling off dramatically. It's not him pretending to puke in a fucking bucket because he thinks that's impressing anybody. It's not any of the videos he's put up that he says is 0 reps in reserve, because that's what 0 reps in reserve look like. This video shows something else that I think is worth commenting. And that is that, unlike Dorian in this clip, Mike clearly cannot coach someone to the point of failure, because none of the videos he's put up showing him taking someone to 0 reps in reserve is anywhere close. Because the bar never slows, as it should, as it does, as it has to. Mike just lets them quit and then goes, that was 0 reps in reserve. Just like he quits in his own sets and goes, that was 0 reps in reserve. So maybe if Mike is going to bring up the who have you coached argument, not that it's relevant, we should be less concerned with who you've coached, especially when they have enough drugs that it doesn't matter, to how good of a coach are you? Because if you're going to claim that you can coach someone to the point of limit failure, you should be able to demonstrate that. Dorian did. I could do it. I've done it. If I ever had the opportunity, I could coach Mike to true failure, where he would roll off the machine and collapse. Not that I think he or his training partners would ever give me the opportunity. Mike can't coach people to the point of failure. He'll let them quit and then say that's 0 reps in reserve, as every video I've put up has shown. All right, enough of that stupid bullshit. Next up, I want to run some of the videos I was sent. I got a ton of them. So at this point, I'm only going to do very short post-video commentary because there's no point in me repeating myself endlessly. I'm not Greg Knuckles. They all look the same. The first 5 or 6 reps, pretty quick and consistent, or depending on how many reps in the set are done. Starts to slow at 1, 2 reps in reserve. 0 reps reserve is real slow, usually a grinder, and then if they do another rep after that, it's to failure. They all look the same. This is what it looks like. There is no debate. There is no discussion. Not from Mike Israetel, not from Christian Thibodeau, unless he wants to argue that every video I've put up, they happen to be slow twitch dominant. Come on, Christian, stop making up bullshit physiology to protect your buddies. Or nut up and send me a video of you doing a grinder like this, and I'll run it too. I won't hold my breath. All right, let's get started with Mike Murray, instead of hack squats to true muscular failure. All right, so here we've got Mike Murray doing a set of 15 in the hack squat. 1.37 seconds. 1.44 seconds. 1.37 seconds, very consistent. 1.40 seconds. 1.37 seconds. You see I've got it listed as meh RER because meh. 1.37 seconds. All right, we're up at 2 seconds, still meh RER. Okay, 1.53 seconds at 6 reps in reserve. 1.54 seconds, 5 reps in reserve. Tiny bit slower, still moving pretty well. All right, 4 reps in reserve, we're up to 2.08 seconds. 3 reps in reserve, 2.32 seconds. Slowing down marginally. 2 reps in reserve, 2.42 seconds. So not quite double where the rep speed started. All right, with 1 rep in reserve, we're at 2.55 seconds, definitely slowing through the middle. Finally, 0 reps in reserve, a grinder, his hips even start to come up, 4.01 seconds, triple where we started at 1.37. He goes for another repetition, pushes, 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 and he's done. And that was a set to actual failure. So as always, first bunch of reps, and I probably should have cut some of them, about 1.3, 1.4 seconds. About 2 reps out, slows to about 2.5 seconds, almost a doubling. Final repetition, 4-second grinder, and his hips actually had to come up a little bit from the sled, I think. He goes for another rep, and that's failure because that's what these look like. That's what they always look like. But basically, the rep speed almost quadrupled, probably closer to tripled from the first rep to the last rep. Moving on, Stephen Smith, banded leg press. All right, we've got Stephen Smith doing a set of 11 in the brutal banded leg press. The rep speed's a little bit weird. It's because the sweatpants made me have to guess a little bit more about when the reps started and stopped. All right, 1.11 seconds, 1.08 seconds, nice and consistent, 1.09 seconds, 1.11 seconds. You'll see Met RER 1.11, 1.15 at 5 reps in reserve, 1.22, little slower, 1.28. All right, we go up to 1.46 seconds at 2 reps in reserve. For reasons that I am not clear on, 1.26 seconds at 1 reps in reserve. No clue on that one. Final rep, 0 reps in reserve, 2.37 seconds, and that's where he stops. All right, so basically the same pattern. There was a weird rep at 1 rep in reserve where it sped up a little bit. I don't know why. I don't know if it was just the way the sweatpants moved or whatever. And then the final rep he did was 2.37 seconds, which was a doubling from the rep before it. He might have gotten another rep or two. Leg press is weird. You frequently can have several last reps, as kind of happened in the Dorian video, where you bring it back or get a little bit more of a rebound. It wasn't as much of a grinder. It certainly slowed. Would have been interesting for him to maybe try another rep, but on the leg press, if you get stuck at the bottom by yourself, ugly things happen. The point is, from the first rep to the last, there was a doubling of the rep duration, and it clearly slowed. It's also possible that the bands, because of the way they provide resistance, might have changed things, because it's really exponentially overloading the top, the nature of the way band resistance works. Next up is Ovi Boeru. I know I'm mangling his last name, and I apologize for that. Doing a standing overhead press. All right, a heavy set of 5, standing overhead press, 1.22 seconds, 1.25 seconds, basically the same, 3 reps in reserve, 1.34 seconds, a little slower. All right, now we're up to 2.06 seconds with 1 reps in reserve, and then boom, final rep, grinds, 4.44 seconds, and he is done. So as you'd expect for a set of 5, not a whole lot of reps the same speed. The first 3 basically the same. Slowed down on rep 4 with 1 reps in reserve, and then the final rep at 0 reps in reserve was 3.5 times the length of the first repetition, 4.44 seconds compared to 1.22 or thereabouts. So as always, same story. Slows down at 1 reps in reserve. Sometimes at 2, instead of 5, it tends to go to max pretty quickly, and he's got really long arms. Anyway, that's overhead press. Next up is Ovi again, doing a dumbbell incline bench. All right, so here's Ovi doing a heavy set of 6 in the incline dumbbell bench. First rep, 1.42 seconds, 5 reps in reserve. 1.28 seconds, because the first rep was harder to start. 1.36 seconds, basically the same. A little bit slower, 2.07 seconds at 2 reps in reserve. 2.05 seconds, 1 rep in reserve, basically the same. And then boom, last rep, got a little bit out of position at the bottom, grinds 5 seconds, and that was definitely the last rep. So very much like his overhead press, the first 4 or so repetitions are just under 2 seconds. At 2 reps in reserve, it slows a little bit to just over 2 seconds. And then on his final rep, boom, it's over a 4-second grinder. So double and some change where he started. That just seems to be his fatigue pattern. probably due to the length of his arms or whatever. So that said, let's next go to Tom Bentley doing a leg press. All right, Tom Bentley on the leg press. There's a little bit of a bounce at the bottom and a weird lockout, so I'm guessing a little bit on the start and stop frames. All right, 1.26 seconds, 5 reps in reserve, to 1.45, 1.48, essentially identical. All right, a little bit slower, 2.05 seconds, 2 reps in reserve. Slows down, 2.38 seconds, 1 reps in reserve. Coming to the final rep, definitely slows, knees break in, grind, 4.07 seconds, and he's done. So like I said, due to the little bit of a bounce at the bottom, and he sort of locked out and then unlocked out, I tried to make the finish frame at the initial lockout, not when the sled came back, but I was making a little bit of a guess about the start and stop frames. But like I said, it's never more than 1/60th if I miss a frame. Rep speed starts at 1.28 seconds, slows a little bit to get to 1 to 2 reps in reserve, and then slows massively on the final repetition, 4 seconds. So that's what, 3.5 times where the rep started. And he definitely would not have gotten another one. Maybe if he got a big bounce out of the bottom, but maintaining that form, he would not have gotten another repetition. And to go ahead and wrap up today's video, I wanted to keep the durations not a little bit shorter. I'm going to show Sean Hobbs doing the ever so rare set of reps to failure in the deadlift. All right, so here's Sean Hobbs doing a heavy set of deadlifts. 1.29 seconds. Don't worry about the first reps. The bounce at the bottom and the way he's locking out is making it a little tough to get rep speed. Regardless, it's pretty similar. 1.16, 1.25. So we get the 3 reps in reserve, 1.48 down to 1.29. That rep kind of glitched. He does take a longer pause. 1 rep in reserve, 2.02 seconds. Final repetition, grind, 3.05, and he's definitely done. All right, so this is the rarely seen set of deadlifts, even is actually 1 rep short of failure. The durations were a bit tough, but figuring out when the start rep was after the bounce, I tried to do it the first visible bend of the bar. Also his lockout, because he leans back a little bit rather than coming to the vertical, I tried to be consistent. There was a glitch rep right there in the middle at like 2 reps in reserve, which is why the time count is different. He takes a longer break between that rep and the next one, which means he loses that rebound out of the bottom, which is part of why it was slower. Doesn't change the fact that 1 rep's in reserve, 2 seconds, and then the final repetition was a grinder just over 3 seconds that I'm not even sure he reached lockout, but I tried to stop it when he stopped moving. So once again, we saw roughly a tripling of rep duration from the first rep to the last. I want to make it clear, I'm not saying you should ever do this on deadlifts. His form did break a little bit. Not safe for most people to do. This is what it looks like. And as you hit 0 reps in reserve, rep duration triples from where it starts, because it always does. So let's cut it there for today. Started by showing Dorian actually showing how to coach someone to a set of actual failure on the leg press and what that looks like. Followed by a variety of different videos, overhead press, incline press, hack squat, banded leg press, and even deadlifts, rarely seen. And the pattern is always the same, guys. It's always the same because it has to be. There are no exceptions. There is no room for argument. There's only room, apparently, for people to bring bullshit. All right. I will still accept videos. Videos at bodyrecomposition.com. I got a handful more after the last one of these things I ran. And I'll run as many of these as I've got videos to run because it's easier than running or writing another article. So this is what failure looks like, guys. You don't get to argue about this. See you next time.